My name is Brianna Gilmartin, and I will be presenting on expanding your impact today as a representative for structural concrete on behalf of FIB. So we talk a lot about how to publish, what to do, what the process is, and of course, I'm always happy to follow up on further questions about how to actually publish. But today we're really talking about making your publications impactful. So what I'll start with is saying, what is research impact? So when we're talking about impact, we're talking about making a difference on the broader scale. So talking about economic, social, environmental, legal implications, taking your scientific work and making it relevant to the larger population. Why should a normal person picking up this publication be interested? That when we talk about impact, we're talking about a few different things. So we start off with, who is the target audience? If somebody picks up your manuscript, is your target audience reading it? Are you writing appropriately for your target audience? If it's just somebody else who's in the concrete field or civil engineering, and you're only trying to make an impact to them, is it written, with the jargon for civil engineering and concrete users? If you're trying to make a broader uh, change and impact, that you have to write for the different audience. That generally, somebody who's a layman in science won't understand the specifics of, a lot of the technical jargon. So you have to write differently for that target audience. I would also define what would be particularly interesting to that audience. Why are they interested in your piece about structural concrete? How does this affect them at a broader level? And looking at how this will affect their future, how this affects what they do or what they use, and communicate why this is relevant. So there's a few different levels of impact. So again, you start out purely scientific. These are your colleagues. These are the people you're communicating with in the journal itself or in your field. Then you're looking at your institutional level. So these are, why should you be receiving funds from your school or from your institution? Why, you should continue to have a career. Then looking higher up, we talk about, funders and policymakers, people at a broader level. So funders, we're talking about, why should my research be funded? Why should I get this grant? These people may not be in your particular field. And you have to prove that what you're doing does increase the knowledge base and increase, your contribution. But some papers also go to a broader policy level and general public, and these are very hard to really relate to the world as a whole. And not every paper is about making a change to the general public. Obviously, there are some papers that you're focusing at your colleagues and your, institutional level. And then there are some papers that make a broader societal difference. And those are the ones that you have to write for a broader impact. So when we're talking about scientific impact, there's also different levels of that, especially based on what discipline you're in, especially, again, for engineering, that we're normally people talk about citations, and citations are great, but are you accomplishing your goals? And I think that's always the important thing to look at the end of the day is, as an engineer, as a, civil engineer particularly, is it important to you that your work is being used, right? That your audience is downloading it and reading it versus if they're citing the work. As much as we love citations, making sure you're accomplishing your goals of discovery and really just general usage, that it it benefits everybody if your paper is being read by the most eyes. So a couple things really help with this, particularly we talk about search engine optimization. So we talk about how you can really focus on making your keywords really integrated into your article. So, make sure that the words you're picking as keywords are in your paper quite a few times. They're in your title, they're in your abstracts, that you're using them over and over again. That your keywords and, a lot of the jargon you're using isn't too specific, but isn't too vague at the same time. I think especially when we're talking about titles, if you're looking at a paper and you pick it up and say to yourself, would I read this? I think that's a really important question that a lot of scientists um, should ask themselves as they write their papers is, if I was reading this title and I saw it on Google or I saw it on a table of contents, would I pick up and read this article? Our the journal's economy has switched, that we're very article based. It's, people Google and Google Scholar use Google Scholar to figure out what articles they're going to read. It's no longer, go to a journal and flip through some pages. It's very much based on, is it hitting the right search criteria? So this has become more and more critical as the years gone on. I think the other really big thing is you're your own biggest advocate. That as much as the journal is doing to market itself, that individual articles are always going to be better from an author level. So once you're published, go about publicizing yourself. Tweet yourself out, share your article with colleagues, make sure others are reading it. And again, when we talk about citations, make sure it's useful. Make sure it's interesting. If you're not going to pick up this article yourself and it's your paper, why would anybody else? So really make sure that you're going in and you're making it a story, making it cohesive, and making it interesting. And of course, self-cite to previous works, but do it wisely. Don't gratuitously cite yourself, but there's no harm in boosting your own work. So moving on, when we talk about societal impacts, we talk about, again, affecting the larger public. That not every paper is going to do this. It doesn't normally go beyond sort of your fields of interest, but some papers really do make a broader societal impact. And we look towards papers that, again, apply to very practical problems and how they fix this. So when you're writing papers for a broader societal impact, talk about how they affect the broader society. What problems are they looking to solve and how do they do it? Really relating to people how this work is going to affect their lives. This leads to tons of benefits back to you, in terms of a stronger case for why you should be funded for your projects, and your job in general. But also it gives you visibility in the broader community. And this is something that when more people have an understanding of science, you know, it generally contributes to the whole. That, people having a better understanding of science means generally bigger science budgets, and more people are understanding of where that money is going. Also, more people may be entering the field where they found something of interest in your work. So, we really talk about having an impact, but, obviously this is still a challenging way to work, that at the end of the day, you need to show justification for what you're doing. So again, this is why we're picking our target audiences. That, a few examples here. Obviously, I'm a little more familiar with the US than with Indonesia, but for us, things like the NSF, that it's required for the grant money to prove that a lot of these experiments will have broader impacts. And this is something that's become sort of ubiquitous in other, as the Global Research Council, the UK Research Council, Plan S, that again, it's changing. Our environment is changing to show more and more that the funding you're getting is going to actual research that will change the scientific world, and the broader world, depending on how it goes. Um, One of the things that you might find helpful is working on an impact statement. So, looking at one or two sentences that are what you did, why you did it, and how it addresses a specific need. Um, so, this is something that I would put up front in your abstract. I would put up front in your introductions, in your conclusions, um, relating why this work is important to the society as a whole, why this work makes a difference, um, and for who. That a lot of people, you know, myself included, I have a background in science, and sometimes personally, I know I was very close to my work to the point that I didn't think about it in terms of how other people think about it. Um, so relating it to people of why they would find this to be of interest. So facts are always going to be interpreted however people see them, which is why it's very it's very helpful to be specific. That again, relate to people why this is important to them and what they will get out of this in the long run. Um, but you don't want people to get lost in the jargon. You don't want people to start reading your paper and not know half the words, and so put the paper down, because that will ultimately not help in the end. So it's a matter of, again, figuring out who your audience is and write for them. That if you're looking to write to an audience at your institutional level, you know, I would be more specific and use more of, again, the jargon of civil engineering, versus, you know, at a broader scale, you're looking to be a little less specific, but you also want to be specific enough that you're understood. Um, I'd also look to address future needs that, again, on a broader society scale, that people are looking to fix a problem. That's how Google works, right? That a lot of the times these papers are picked up because they're searched for in terms of how are they fixing a problem. So address the future of your work as well. How this fixes the problem now, or how this fixes the problem in the future, or future work that could be built off of your work. I can't really underscore this one enough. Impact is interdisciplinary. So most of the science being done nowadays is based on interdisciplinary work, that fields of science are working together more and more, and discoveries made in one field are crossing the lines into another field, and they go, oh, that's interesting, and it picks up from there, and it's causing, it's relaying more and more science. So one of the things, again, I always like to suggest is, after writing a paper, have somebody at your institution outside of your immediate field read the paper. And if they understand, comprehend, or even better, find it interesting, you've done a good job. That, you know, again, particularly my background is in chemical biology, reading an engineering paper, if I could comprehend all of what's going on, as well as further find it interesting, you've done a good job. So looking at the interdisciplinary effects is something that's really helpful and really cannot underscore it enough. Very, very important. Obviously, again, a lot of this is easier said than done. Um, that sometimes doing things at the proposal stage versus the reporting stage does get to be a little bit challenging. We do see the challenges of use-driven research. So obviously, research being a little more practical is easier to explain. But at the end of the day, is that being cited? Is that moving the science enough of it? So, finding that nice balance between what's practical versus what's theory and driving the scientific knowledge. I also think when we're talking about basic research impact, that, some science, of course, all that publishes in Structural Concrete or other journals, you're going to talk about, this is obviously novel material, it's obviously material that makes a difference. But, obviously sometimes looking at the impact of your work specifically is difficult to measure, and by the time people cite you and download your work, that it takes a long time to show that you're having the results that you're looking for. So obviously, while I'm telling you to write for impact, it's very hard to tell you what impact you're going to have without waiting a couple years to see. We're also, when we're talking about impact, that it also leads to a lot of gray areas, that you're talking about a lot of different factors in place. There's a lot of, I think a good example here is climate change, that you could talk about all the environmental outcomes of climate change, but there's economic factors in play that are going to affect that. So as much as I'm trying to fix a problem and may work on the environmental outcomes, that I'm never going to get past some of those economic factors in order to show my impact. So just be aware of what else is happening in the field. So to kind of circle around, clean it all up, to get started, again, specifically identify your audience. Make sure that you're writing at a level for the audience you're trying to reach. If you're trying to reach your institutional level, if you're trying to reach funders, if you're trying to reach a broader audience, you're going to have to use different styles of words and different ways to relate to people. Also, focus on the outcome of your work to the audience, not to yourself. It's great that you learned lessons, but what is the value of your paper to whoever you're trying to reach? I also have seen a lot of successful papers in the past contribute suggestions for further work and why not their methods might have worked and how they could probably improve it. As well as, as we talked before, interdisciplinary, any sort of broader scale, what might prevent some of this research from being implemented. Explaining why this is relevant and why, it may or may not happen. Last but not least, again, I want to always say, promote yourself. You are your best advocate. You know your work backwards and forwards, and you will share more than any marketing campaigns. So, looking at maybe gold or green open access in order to share your work for free. Post links to your article, send them around to colleagues and, people you may know in the field. Wiley does article share through your author services dashboard. So you could share a PDF version of your article with up to 10 colleagues. And then we also do content share where you could go to your article specifically and find a read-only link you could share with the general public, or you could share on Twitter, or you could share with your friends, where anybody could get a free-to-read version of your article. I've also included a link there for author services and how you could look at some of these other pathways we have for maximizing your impact. And lastly, looking at things like preprints as you're getting ready to finalize your submissions and things like that. I hope everybody found this presentation to be really useful in terms of writing for impact. I know it's not as basic as maybe how to publish or things like that, but I think as we look more and more at our funding and our budgets, this is something that becomes more and more useful. Making sure that you're showing the value of your research and making sure that that's understood by the people at the levels making funding decisions. So I would be happy to answer any questions by email. I know David should be here today to answer some questions for you. So thank you very much, and I hope to hear from anybody. So have a great day.